Alright, I recently did some reading into what I need to do to get a medical exemption for not taking the COVID-19 vaccine. Not that I've run into any barriers yet, but I want to be prepared, especially for my workplace, especially for travel. I think the EU is opening up to people who are vaccinated. I have some chronic health issues that make the vaccine risky. I wouldn't say that I would certainly get an effect out of it, but I also have antibodies to COVID-19, so hopefully eventually they will recognize that. I think as a child I got to skip the chickenpox vaccine because I got chickenpox itself, so hopefully we'll see something come out of this. They're still working on studies as I speak about whether or not having antibodies protects you. But while I was digging into it, I saw a little bit of information about how employers should treat this situation that made me wish we would adopt the same principle elsewhere in our lives. So I was reading an article about how employers may ask employees about their status, but should avoid going beyond status, right? If you start digging into why somebody refused the vaccine or their plans for it, it could cause sensitive information it could almost pressure the employee to give up sensitive information, right? What kind of health condition is preventing them from getting the vaccine, right? And I think that's a very sensible idea to stop at asking their status. Now the problem is that in our everyday lives we often don't stop there, right? Especially when it comes to food. Go to any workplace event where food is involved and try refusing some food, whether it be because of a medical reason or just because of a personal reason, or it could be some other sensitive reason, right? It could be your religion, it could be, I'm trying to think what else could come into play. Mostly religion and disability would be the two things that would, two sensitive matters that might be related to somebody refusing food, right? But we don't have a problem with digging into why somebody is refusing. We take it very personally, right? But yet with a vaccine, we know that we need to stop at, what's your vaccination status, period, right? With food, we don't seem to have that sense, right? We push, just try one bite, we seem to take it very personally, right? Nobody would take it personally that somebody is not getting a vaccine, right? Nobody skips a vaccine to spite somebody, Anyway, during the quarantine, I mused a lot about traveling overseas. I have a big problem with prejudice here in the Seattle area, especially with dietary preferences, especially with relationship preferences. When I travel to Taiwan and I refuse food, people don't take it personally there. See, here in the United States, especially in Seattle, a lot of times people exclude me from events just because they don't want me to refuse food. They think I don't fit in by not eating, as if they could taste what I'm tasting, right? And they get very offended by, even if we go out to a restaurant, I'm not even talking about somebody preparing food for me, right? A few friends and I go to a restaurant and I have to grill the waiter on food ingredients, and people get really bothered by that. They feel embarrassed by it, and they just don't want to include me in the festivities anymore. At the workplace, people make a big fuss about what foods I'll eat or not eat. When I was working on my PhD, I overheard a few of my classmates. This was back in the late 2000s when people used to love to gamble on everything, right? Remember when online poker was popular, and by extension, people often made side bets with people, right? And one time, I was just about to head into a Christmas event when I overheard two of my classmates make a bet about whether or not I would eat whatever, right? Hey, bet you $10 that Andrew's not going to eat this, right? Something like that. And I tried to pretend I didn't hear it, but I was very offended by stuff like that. Why are you turning my life into a story, right? Into some kind of event to bet on? This was back in the day when people lost their mind about gambling. I had a couple friends. My favorite memory was one of my former high school classmates. I had gone to his birthday party, and he had invited his girlfriend over, and then another friend of his came to the house and paid him a very large gambling debt, a few hundred to $1,000 or so dollars. And when he collected the money off this guy, his eyes really lit up. And I remember thinking, gee, your eyes didn't light up so much when your girlfriend showed up. I felt really bad for the girl. But, so anyways, now we're in 2008, 2009, and when I was working on my PhD, and I overheard two of my classmates commenting and making book on whether or not I would eat various food items. And in Taiwan, that would never happen. I get invited to events where I can't eat anything at all, and I still have good company there. We recognize that, well, a lot of Asian cultures, we recognize that food is just like an extension of medicine, right? Or it could be the other way around. It's actually medicine is an extension of food. Here in the United States, we seem to decouple the idea of food and medicine, right? Oh, you could eat all the crap you want, and if you have a problem, just pop a pill, take an injection, get surgery. That's how we view things, and it's not your fault, right? You have bad genes, just bad luck, and even though the COVID-19 mortality rates vary so much from one country to the next, right? In Africa, practically nobody was dying of COVID-19, and I think the reason why is they literally cannot afford to poison themselves with sugar, with MSG, with trans fat. But Americans are not going to believe that, right? They think it's genetic, but African Americans have a very high mortality rate from COVID-19, right? If it really were genetics, you would think that they have the same genes as Africans who stayed in Africa, right? And then they'll come up with another excuse that, oh, we're overcrowded. Really? Really? We have much better sanitation here. And, yeah, they love excuses. As long as it enables them to continue eating their junk food, continue doing their drugs, continue taking their prescription drugs, continue doing all these unhealthy lifestyles, they'll come up with any excuse they want to, right? I mean, it's don't get me wrong. I believe in letting them do whatever they want, but at the same time, they push their philosophy on everybody else, right? And they exclude you for not wanting to poison yourself, not wanting to kill yourself. That's part of the reason why I wanted to leave the country. I traveled in the Rocky Mountains for a couple months, or 6 months actually, this past year. I spent some time in Wallace, Idaho. I was in Missoula, Montana for 3 months. I was in Helena, Montana for a month and a half. I was in Lincoln, Montana for 3 days. Unfortunately, I wanted to spend more time in Lincoln, but unfortunately the internet connection is pretty shoddy up there, and I needed to work remotely. And what do I like about the Rockies? People live and let live. I was able to go to events even when I had to refuse food, and I never had to explain why I was refusing food. It could have been just a personal preference. And in Lincoln, or in the Rockies, people might not recognize food as an extension of medicine, but at least they recognize that people have their own ways of life. And I actually like it that way. In Taiwan, sometimes people get too gung-ho about eating healthy, and they judge you for your unhealthy choices. Don't get me wrong, I have unhealthy habits myself, especially pulling all-nighters to write computer games, especially sometimes I do binge eat a little bit more than I should. Even to this day, I still have problems with that. And the last thing I want is, when I'm struggling with those problems, to keep hearing that it's killing myself. I know that. And in the Rockies, I don't seem to have that problem either. In Taiwan, sometimes. I like that. I also mused about going to Poland, Gdansk, Poland. In Poland, people also recognize that food is an extension of medicine. They're a little bit more live and let live compared to Taiwan. You still get a few of those comments, a lot more than in the Rockies for sure. One downside of Poland is that they don't recognize people's choice for being single nearly as much as Taiwan, nearly as much as the Rockies does. More so than Seattle, I would say. Uh, the difference is that in Poland, they don't recognize being single, but at the same time, it's so easy to mingle with others, right? In Seattle, we're very closed off. If you approach somebody the wrong way, people take it very personally. So it's a mixed bag. But Seattle seems to have the worst of it all, right? We judge people, and at the same time, we don't make it easy to conform to others. It's just a very contradictory. I think Seattle's going to have the worst time with vaccine choice. And that's probably why the pandemic has played out a whole lot worse than it has in a lot of other places, right? We like to judge people for their lifestyles and make it difficult for people to lead a healthy lifestyle.